Well, hi guys. I'm a little late today by about 8 minutes. Oh, not good, but hello friends. Thanks for coming in. And my new friend Donis P from Haiti. How are you? Thanks for joining us here on our YouTube uh, education channel. We do a lot of learning here. But thanks for joining and thanks for what do you call it? Subscribing to our channel. So tonight, guys, we're going to be talking about limiting amino acids. I'm not going to go super in depth as far as like biochemistry stuff goes, but general understanding what it is, why it's present in feed, what you're looking for, and what happens when it's not there, which shouldn't be a problem because we're usually using a feed, like a commercial feed. But if not, we're going to talk about what happens and why that is. So if you guys have any questions or comments, drop them down in there. I'll be happy to get to them. If you're new here and you like learning, I sure do, hit the sub button, subscribe, and check us out. We're also on the Facebook. We do a lot of communication over there. I mean, really our goal overall is to encourage people to engage in self-improvement in the context of homesteading. So learning new skills, trying new things, stepping out where you're not so comfortable. And you're going to find out through trial and error, you learn new things. It's not that hard, and it's pretty rewarding. We've been doing this for 6 years, quite a while. Not 30 years, but a while enough that we have plenty of information, and experience that I like sharing. Alexa Max said, good evening. No, Angela? No. Hope you guys are having a good evening. Yeah, Angela was not feeling so swell today, so she took off. It's winter time. That's okay. Oh, by the way, guys, Happy New Year. I forgot. It's 2026. And, I never really put much stock into demarcation by the new year, like saying that that's a significant thing. Not for me, just because if you're going to do something, you have 365 days. I know for people, you hear New Year, it's a new thing. That's an important point. And if that's a launch point for people, that's great. Just personally, I never really saw the significance in it for initiating change, because I'm trying to do that all the time anyway. Okay. Before we begin, a few things. None of this is going to be veterinary advice or medical advice. Talk to your pet vet or your doctor, your animal doc, about any treatment of animals. I'm not trying to help you diagnose stuff. This is general information, education, which I encourage you guys to go out and, verify, look this stuff up and learn. That's the whole point of this. I give a little bit of information. Maybe you remember one or two things, and then you go out and learn a little more on your own and self-teach, or talk to somebody who has experience because, hey, I heard this crazy guy on the internet talking about this. Is this true? And maybe you get some new info. Okay. Yeah, down in the description too of this video, I always put links, free stuff, educational stuff that we wrote here for poultry, taking care of quail or your chickens. So check that out. It's free. It's just a Google Drive link, and you can download that if you want. And then all kinds of fun stuff. I always talk about this. It's quail Q&A. People want to learn about how to take care of quail. And I know something about people is they don't like to put a lot of time into stuff. So I wrote this very short pamphlet where you don't have to spend any time. So just read this thing, and you'll pretty much know how to raise quail, just like everybody else who brags about knowing how to raise quail. It's not that hard. So maybe I'll talk about quail business. People always, oh, can I make money with my quail? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. But like anything else, you need to have a plan and strategize accordingly and be intentional. And I should talk about that. Maybe I'll do that next week or the week after, if you guys want that. Quail is a very low level entry point. It takes very little skill. It's not difficult to get these birds hatching properly. Okay, low entry point, high, market. So saturated. There's a lot of people doing it. So you want to be good at what you're doing, know what you're doing, know how to market it, etc. So hatching quail, pretty easy. Getting product to a customer, that's the challenge that people don't sometimes prepare for or plan for properly, and it's perfectly fine. That's why there's lots of people in the world you can go out and ask. And what is Alexa Max saying? Yes, some info on that. Selling critters, making money off your critters. I lost my lighting, so I look kind of like a Frankenstein today, more than usual. Yeah, but if you want, yeah, we'll do that next week. Talk about quail biz. It's pretty easy stuff. I like going over that because it's a niche thing that we do, and it applies, and you guys can relate to that. Anything else before I begin? I think so. A little bit about us. Sorry, I'm going to show you something. Speaking of quail, my wife and Angela and I have a small hatchery homestead where we teach and raise critters, and we raise jumbo Coturnix quail, fabulous egg and meat bird, and they lay eggs. They're tiny eggs, but the birds are small. So the benefit of the birds, why we raise quail versus chickens, they're about, I always like to show you, this is my scale. I don't really use a live bird, so I drew one. They're about this big, and they lay eggs about this big. So why do we keep these instead of chickens? Because they don't require lots of space. You raise them in a hutch. You don't require a run. You can keep them 3 per square foot. And we don't usually keep them that dense, but you can. They lay 300 eggs per hen every year. So each hen is going to produce about 300 eggs. They're domesticated quail, and they're very efficient food animals. Out of topic, but are you guys going to sell eggs, silkies, anytime soon out of state? I want silkies, but I want eggs from you guys if possible. Alex Mack. I will tell Angela. She's the silky extraordinary breeder. But yeah, we're working on shipping live critters and eggs. It's not really very difficult to do either of those things. It's just an MPIP certification. But that's not even the problem. The problem is just we want to have a nice infrastructure set up. Okay, so it's not going to be a headache trying to ship things out going crazy. So just want to have the infrastructure set up. But yes, I'm sure we'll be doing that shortly, probably this spring. Okay, cool. Moving on. Methionine and lysine. Have you guys heard of these amino acids? You probably have. They're important. We're going to discuss them. And we're going to find out why they're important, why they're limiting, what happens when they're not present, why they might not be in sufficient amounts in your feed. And we're going to discuss that here tonight. I'll try to keep it light and not too technical, so I don't bog people down and scare them off. But if you have a technical question, go ahead and ask. I may probably know it. So the goal here is to know what the methionine and lysine are, how they function as limiting amino acids, what limiting amino acids is referring to, what their role is in the synthesis of proteins in birds. Ooh, sounds exciting, I know. Sounds like high school bio, right? But it's actually cool. And if this is something you're doing, taking care of poultry, you want to know more and more. The more you know, the better you know your birds, and the more you can rule out things you may see manifesting in their behavior or their condition. You start recognizing suboptimal output from your birds or their condition. So it's nice to know these things. So what is the limiting amino acids, lysine and methionine? How are they functioning in the body? And what we can do to recognize their deficiencies, and how do we replace them? Or put them back into diet if they are inefficient. And what are the cases where they're going to be possibly not in sufficient amount? And the reason I'm doing this video is somebody had reached out to me on TikTok talking about their quail, and they weren't laying. I don't know what the problem was, but the feed label that he sent me showed that it was lower in these 2 amino acids. And I don't know if that was the issue, but I thought it would be something interesting to talk about. Donis says, I hope I'm pronouncing that properly. A guy named Jeff Maddox talks a lot on this subject, and I'm glad you're going over it. I was just talking about Jeff. We actually met him. He works near us, which is neat. He's a very nice guy. He's not very far from us, maybe half an hour. We met with him a few years ago because we make our own feed for our birds, and our customers got interested, so we wanted to package it for our local customers. So we really wanted to have a very high quality, nutrient-dense, deliverable and efficient feed for poultry, for chickens, particularly because Angela's breeding these nice silky chickens. So we wanted to have a very high quality feed. And we're going to talk about that, not that feed, but why feed formulation is important for birds, for our chickens. So the problem that we're facing is that chickens do not run on protein. Everybody's looking at protein, but what is protein? Protein is made of the amino acids. Then they run on specific amino acids, and methionine and lysine are usually the first two. Oh, I did pronounce it correctly. Methionine and lysine are usually the first two to limit those protein synthesis. So what is an amino acid? You guys remember school chemistry? Remember what amino acid is? It's people generally will say it's a building block of protein, which it's true, but it's also functioning as an instruction for the building of protein. So when the enzymes are going to work making proteins and the amino acids are coming in and they're being broke down, it's really, really super, super unbelievably complex what happens at the cellular level. I mean, it's mind-boggling. It does it super efficiently. But it's taking your protein, deconstructing it essentially, taking the parts of the protein, the amino acids, and putting them back together elsewhere where they're needed. And when we're talking about our chickens, we want to make sure they have their essential amino acids. So the amino acids, yes, are building components of protein, and they also instruct where they're going to go. But there are the essential and non-essential amino acids in the diet. There are 20 amino acids, and for your poultry, 10 of them are called essential. So when we talk about essential in diets, human or chicken, it means we have to get it. I'm sorry, not in diets. When we talk about essential in nutrients in the body, we're talking about they need to be acquired from diet. So if it's essential, I like to remember it like this. It's essential I eat it because my body can't make it. The other amino acids, body can synthesize and make, but like the essential amino acids need to be gotten from diet, okay? Just like us humans, we need to get many things from our diet. We can't just make them in the body. Okay, moving on. We talked about the 10 essential amino acids. Amino acids are parts and the order matters, meaning so the proteins, which are also extremely complex, are made by the amino acids falling into, they're in an order. So they're put together in an order and then they're folded up into a shape, a complex three-dimensional shape, protein folding. And then those proteins go and do their various jobs and roles. Everything's made of protein, okay? Enzymes, hormones, all made of protein. There are all these chemical messengers in your body, or enzymes, these catalysts in the body. So you have all these different proteins going on, your skin, your nails, right? Hair, your muscle tissue, all these fun things. So protein is very, very important, not just for getting huge at the gym. It's the foundation for being made a living organism. So I don't want to ramble off too much because this really is very, I do a ton of notes and learning on these subjects, and I don't want to bog you guys down too much. And usually when Angela's here, I have somebody to back and forth off of. So I don't want to get rambling. All right. So what kind of essential and versus non-essential amino acids are we looking at? We discussed that very briefly. The essential amino acids must come from diet. They're not going to be manufactured in the body. So methionine and lysine, these of course are essential. Now what is happening with the methionine and lysine? A bird can look very well fed and still be nutritionally constrained if amino acids, the essential amino acids, are running short. Very similar to us, particularly here in the United States, where we have extremely calorie-dense diets that are nutrient deficient, okay? So we have lots of calories, lots of energy, but we don't have foundational catalysts or building blocks for optimal health. You know, and all this stuff is happening at the cellular level. We look externally at at our body, at our mood, and how we're feeling, but all this stuff is happening cellularly, like every living organism, like the chicken. So when we're having a deficiency in the appropriate nutrients, and in the case of this, what we're talking about, the amino acids, this animal is going to be negligent, like nutritionally insufficient, and they're going to be forming and functioning suboptimally. Okay. Fat chicken, you may have a fat chicken. Chicken may be depositing fat because it's got plenty of energy, but it's not having nutrients, so it's diverting all this excess stuff that it can't use because it doesn't have the other components to use what's present. In this case, talking about protein, all right? If it can't synthesize protein, it may have the raw materials for protein, but it can't build the protein, so some of that in the form of waste is stored as energy, so they start depositing fat. But you guys, realistically, you're not going to be worrying about that. If you're buying a decent feed, if you're feeding your animals a decent chicken feed, like a commercial feed, they do all of the mathematics, they do the formulation. They don't want to be producing a chicken feed that's going to be making birds ill or weak. So that's going to be taken care of. Again, this is cool information and it's good to know, but mostly it's not going to be an issue if you're feeding them from a commercial feed. And what also is true is that nutrient deficiencies mimic illnesses like infection, disease. You know, they're hard, I'm going to say they're hard to tell apart, but there may be contributing factors in the environment. Like let's say it's spring and all of a sudden my chickens are looking sickly and they're weak. I'm going to assume not nutrient deficiency, but, well, it's spring. All the little bacteria and viruses and parasites, they're all coming to life again, so they may have a sickness. You see, but nutrient deficiency can look very similar to an illness caused by an organism. That's why we say go see a vet, talk to somebody, or get some good opinion advice. You know what? Can you guys hold on 1 second while I take a sip of water? God, this talking dries your mouth out. And it's winter time. Okay, where was I? Am I down there? Did that. We talked about that. Sorry, I got lost here for a sec. All right, what are limiting amino acids? They set the ceiling on how much usable protein the bird can build. That's really the key issue with limiting amino acids. They limit synthesis. If all other amino acid needs are met, like all the other amino acids are present, but the diet is insufficient in these two limiting amino acids, both lysine and methionine, then the bird, metabolically, cellularly, will not be able to synthesize proteins. Okay? So it needs these present in the diet, or they will have a very difficult time, well, inability really, to synthesize the other proteins. That's how it limits them. And they're in very small quantity as well. So when you're looking at a feed, lysine and methionine. So with lysine in the diet, it's about 0.5 to 0.7%. Okay? So if you're thinking about that ratio, 0.5, so half of a percent to 0.7, 0.7% of the feed is going to be lysine. So that's a very critical number. So you can mess this diet ratio up by diluting the feed, or if the feed's not formulated properly. Methionine is, I guess, around 0.8. Is that right? I'm going to take my notes. I should know this off the top of my head, but it's around 0.8% of the feed. Alex Mack, you have told us where to buy your food, but my only option for me is Big R or Tractor Supply. What would be the closest option in rewards? What would be your closest option in regards to feed? Oh, I don't quite understand your question. We don't really ship because it's ungodly expensive. We're not distributing through one of those giant hubs like Chewy, where you do. That's, yeah, hopefully, eventually. Like we do local sales. So probably not shipping it. I mean, we could ship, but it's ungodly expensive. All right, so lysine and methionine are going to be in a very precise range in the feed in the diet. Again, around 0.5 to 0.7 for lysine and 0.8% for the methionine. So what's lysine doing? Or more precisely, what is deficiency of lysine in the chicken looking like? So lysine is a required building block for lean tissue and production proteins. Their meat, their flesh, their muscle. So broiler birds, if a diet's low in lysine, they're not going to have proper growth. They're going to be a little scrawnier. They're going to be slower to grow. Lysine in there. And methionine. One moment, please. I'm sorry, guys. I'm dying of thirst. I'm going to read off of my notes because I do take some good notes. So lysine for their muscle growth is not just more weight, but it's building new protein tissue and as well as egg protein. So the albumin in the egg is going to be quite reliant on lysine. Methionine, so that's the production of all the protein in the bird is going to require methionine. So that's quite important. And without it, it's going to start stalling and you're going to have problems overall throughout the entire chicken. It's required to initiate protein synthesis. Protein or methionine deficiency, you may see in feather picking, not because of nutritional wisdom, because of the methionine in the feathers. Generally, nutritional wisdom in an animal, they instinctively know a nutrient is deficient in their body, so they go eat it. They go find it and they eat it. They go out into the environment. So you may think that these chickens are eating the feathers to get that missing nutrient, but what's happening is they're having nutritional stress, nutritional deficiency stress, so they get agitated and they start pecking each other. And you may notice some scruffy feathers. But again, that could be a whole bunch of other things as well, right? You forgot to mention that animal-based amino acids are better than plant-based ones. Ooh, Donis, that's quite right. I'm actually going to mention that. Where am I mentioning that? I have that in here. Yeah, in the next section, I believe. But very good. It's quite true. When we talk about this. So feather quality declines because it's going to be used for feather production. So the feathers may look a little rough and slow feather replacement. And because you're seeing the feather picking as well, contributing to this, to make it look not so well. Reduced egg size and egg mass. So not for the albumin, but hens may keep laying, but they produce smaller eggs and they lose persistence over time with a methionine deficiency. That is why I thought the fellow who was asking me about his quail problem, I thought it was a potential methionine deficiency because his feed label was very low, or proportionally, it was lower than it should have been in his feed for his quail. So why do these two become limiting in modern diets? Well, before we talk about modern diets, let's talk about traditional ancestral diets. I've talked about this before. We've gone over this. Your chicken is not a natural chicken. It is a specifically bred hybrid. It's a bred animal. It's a domesticated bird bred from the wild jungle fowl, the Gallus gallus, way out there in Indonesia. That bird is small. It's only a couple of pounds, right? It has access to its wild foraging and its food year-round. It's a clutch layer. It's not laying eggs every day. That was put into our domesticated birds. A lot of people don't realize that. Wild chickens aren't laying eggs every day, and they're kind of tiny. They're little scrawny things. So the new modern bird, they're designed and bred to be high output, metabolically costly animals. They need more feed. They need more nutrients for the high demands that they have, protein in particular, for the high demands of that daily egg output. So if you have domesticated chickens, they're much different than their ancestor, the Gallus gallus. That bird living in the jungle, it's getting methionine and lysine from animal sources, insects, but it's scrounging around for other critters, little mice and other small animals. But it's getting these nutrients met from the environment, coupled with the fact that it has a lower metabolic requirement because it's a smaller bird. We can't do that with our modern birds. And I did a video on this, like if it was the end of civilization and we had to feed our chickens at home, could we do that? Is that going to be possible? Likely not. They would perish for the amount of feed and calories they need to sustain, reproduce. And that's not even considering daily egg production, because you're going to need these nutrients for these birds to thrive and function. So if they all of a sudden don't get it, they're not going to function well. You can partially free range a chicken to meet its dietary needs, but even in the best of conditions, and I went over this again in another video, this was done academically, a university, I don't know, it was a university or something. It was an academic resource. They actually did study on this, and the chicken was only able to supply 30% or so in optimal conditions via free ranging, meaning they have the best kind of pasture setting, full of bugs and weeds, but they're still only able to meet their needs at about 30% with complete free ranging. So they still had to be supplemented because these are big, giant, egg-laying, modern domesticated birds. They certainly probably wouldn't be getting their methionine and lysine needs from foraging. Due to monoculture, die-offs, the ecosystems are very different, and you're not going to have a variety of the critters that were here, just a century or two ago. Things are different. So, Donis, what we're talking about, protein, plant proteins, they are incomplete in the poultry sense, and this is true. Our feed, we do put fish meal in, we do have animal proteins in there. They're easier for the bird to digest. I mean, the bird can digest plant proteins for sure, but there's also essential fatty acids in the animal proteins, as well as the lysine, methionine. And the proteins from the plant, they're going to be incomplete for a chicken. Right? Because, well, think about that too, because they're scavengers. The gallus, the jungle fowl, their wild cousin, that thing was a scavenger. He'd go out into the jungle and he's eating all sorts of fun stuff. The bugs, the frogs, the mice, eggs, okay? And it would be like today's modern chicken would be a 350-pound muscular dude's dietary needs. And the gallus, the wild jungle fowl, would be a 110-pound small, skinny guy, his dietary needs. They're vastly different for them to thrive. I mean, not saying the guy who is 110 pounds, he's very healthy, he's just smaller framed. And this big, giant 300-pound guy, he's healthy, but he has a very high metabolic need compared to the smaller guy. So very similar to domesticated chicken versus its wild cousin. Hope that makes sense. I try to use metaphor to make these things relational. Oh, backyard dilution. So what is backyard dilution? What are we doing? We're diluting feed. So I feed my chickens, but then I like to throw them treats, which are kitchen scraps. If I'm feeding them too many chicken, if I'm feeding my chickens too many, this is like seashells. If I feed my chickens too many kitchen scraps, I may dilute its dietary intake of its essential nutrients. In other words, it's like the kids eating junk food instead of eating dinner. They're filling up on something that doesn't have anything in it, and so they're not getting their total nutrients. That's not going to hurt them in a day or two, obviously, but if it's something persistent, if they're eating a diluted diet, like they have their feed, but they're eating junk, maybe they're running a restaurant or something, they're just throwing rice out all the time. Oh, I have extra rice, I have some filler. I don't want to waste it, so I feed it to the chickens. You're not helping the chickens because it's just junk food, like for us to eat a bag of potato chips and skip all the good healthy meals. A very similar thing. So we dilute their feed by giving them kitchen scraps, not to mention as well cheap feeds. They use cheap ingredients. That's how they keep them cheap. They're going to use like grain byproducts, wheat midlands, things that are not going to be nutrient dense, that are filler, but don't cost a lot of money. And here's the thing with commercial chicken feed. You're not selling feed to a savvy consumer. The consumer doesn't teach themselves. And the company just wants to sell the feed, so they put pictures of happy chickens in beautiful pastures looking well. Oh, Vern is here. Hi, hon. Happy New Year to you. I hope you had a very nice one. Oh, it is New Year's today, too. So actual happy New Year's. So you want to definitely investigate if you're buying feed, raising chickens, and depending on what your goals are and what your budget is, look at the feed or contact a mill. I always like to suggest contacting a feed mill, local feed mill. They usually have software and they can help you run a mix, a custom mix or a feed mix they may have available there that they sell, which is going to be much, much cheaper than the big box stores. You can buy them in bulk, buy these 100-pound, 50-pound bags, buy a bunch of them and save a bit of money. So we buy everything from the mill. We get mill feed. We get some tractor store stuff, but most of it comes from the mill. And we talk to the guy there. We're like, hey, we need this for quail. He's like, okay. Or we have broiler birds, and we need broiler mix. And what's cool about that is the mill, everything's fresh. It's from local farms. It's not been sitting on a truck or sitting in a warehouse for several months. And we did a video on that. Feed goes bad, especially ground feed. We use whole grains, but when you grind feed, it breaks it open. It exposes it to air. The surface area has contact with oxygen. Oxygen's very corrosive, and the oxygen begins to break down the nutrients that were present in that grain. That grain, you can usually plant it many, many years, if not decades later, if it's kept intact. Hi, Katie. How are you? Happy New Year. So when you're looking at grain in a big box, many times it's been sitting there for months and it's been exposed to oxygen. So what you're looking on the label, the nutrients and the ingredient list on the label is correct at the time of packaging, but two things happen. There is loss when it's ingested. Are they going to be able to bioavailable? Is it bioavailable, the nutrients? And how much of the nutrients has deteriorated due to time, heat, and exposure to oxygen? Okay. So these are things to think about. I mean, that's being really particular, but I'm a little obsessed with this stuff. I mean, because I do it all the time. We make our own chicken feed, but I cook everything here at our house from scratch. And I just want everybody to be healthy. I'm not like wacky about it, but I learn about it. And I'm like, okay, this mechanistically makes sense. And this is how I'm going to take care of us here. And let me read my notes here. Anybody else? Late joins the party. Listen and re-listen. Happy New Year. It's good to see you, Katie. I hope you had a great year. Great New Year's Eve. I'm an official old person, so I like going to bed early. And I wake up early too, though. Okay, so we talked about cheap grains, feed diluting the feed by feeding your chickens junk food. I mean, treats are fine, just like treats are fine for anybody. But if it's all the time, you're going to be replacing quality food or quality nutrition. And again, chickens have a high metabolic cost. They're expensive metabolically, which means they need a lot of nutrient. They need protein. They need all these proper fats. They need this stuff because they're designed to be that larger, unnatural size. It's not their natural ancestral size. They've been bred and they're laying eggs every day. So they do have a high cost to exist, relatively speaking. It's not something to freak out about. It's just higher than their cousin. But you want them to be, especially if they're your kind of like family or your pets, you want the chickens to be happy. And just like us, if our dietary needs are not being properly met, it affects us, mentally. The chickens will stress. It'll manifest in their behavior, and they're social creatures. So you will see behavior amongst the chickens when there's a deficiency. Do you feel the 17% layer feed isn't acceptable for laying quail? I mean, that's about what we keep in our feed. 17 or 18% is what we're feeding our quail when we have it mixed at the mill. And they seem to be fine. I mean, we never had a problem with eggs or anything with them. We can give them, of course, when they're hatching, we give them high feed. Sorry, made by Kalmbach. Yeah, I mean, Kalmbach's a decent feed. I haven't really looked at it recent, but I'm sure it's a very decent feed. They make good feed. I mean, they have a good reputation, so they want to preserve that. And you can always, well, I don't know. Can you call them? I know you used to be able to call people and ask questions, but the best thing to do is just take a look at the label, look at the ingredients, see what the first 3 ingredients are or so, and then run down there. I like usually if I'm really particular, I'll do the legwork and I'll contact whoever it is and find out where they're sourcing stuff and how long it's sitting on a shelf. In that case, like for feed, I'll say, where are you getting it? How long has it been sitting there? Then if I'm really particular, the organic thing, if you want to go into depth. Chicken and quail have been instrumental in my personal mental health. Awesome. We do locally milled 17% layer feed for a quail and chicken. Well, that's fantastic. That's really, that makes me very happy to hear, Katie, because that's one of the things, like one of the main reasons I kind of encourage people to do this stuff is for, when I say personal betterment, I don't mean performance. I mean up here, to be at peace, to feel accomplishment, to have something grounded, where they're grounded in, and they feel like, this is something I control, I can work on, and there's feedback, there's reward with it. So it is very rewarding. It's good for us mentally and socially. We engage with our friends and family about our critters. Let me guzzle another sip of water. I think I'd be good in, Congress, doing a filibuster, just sitting for 24 hours straight and talking. But that's really cool, Katie. I'm glad to hear that. I'm really want to encourage everybody to just try something. Like I always say, you try something and eventually you find something that sticks and you like it. And all of a sudden your life changes. Hey, Tommy, local milled here too. West brand egg layer, a micro pellet, but it's at 20%, I think. I've been a bit since I looked. I really like the micro pellet. It helps me waste substantially. And Tommy, I did not forget you. I sent you an email. I hope it didn't get lost. I sent it a couple weeks ago. I know it's holiday time. It's not a big deal. But just to let you know it is there. Anything else I really want to follow up on here? I was going to talk about guaranteed analysis. Guaranteed analysis on the back of your chicken feed. It'll tell you obviously the ingredients and the percentage of crude, protein, the fat, the methionine and lysine are listed in there. Do I have guaranteed analysis sitting here? I think I do. I think I did. You know what? Let me drag one out because I know I have one. Okay, here's one. It's the back of our feed label. You see that little crude protein, crude fat, crude fiber, calcium, phosphorus, salt, lysine, and methionine. So they're listed in there. Ours has a 0.9% methionine. See that? So these are going to be, usually it's just a single sheet. I have a single sheet too, we stick on there. But there's going to be a guaranteed analysis on your chicken feed telling you what's in there. But look at the ingredients, see what's in the feed. And if you don't know anything about it, do a little investigation. There's plenty of academic sources. Do not go to Facebook. I see these people on Facebook all the time. Any question you ask, you get the extreme polar of any possible answer. They're all showing up. Hey, I need help with my chicken. X, Y, and Z is this, and it's all over the place. Okay, I'll look at the mail. I've been watching for it too. Promise I don't even know. It's all right, Tom. It's not a big deal. I just sent an email about a thing. I did research. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching, Tommy's one of my buddies who views here, and he has a cool channel, the Aquatic News Network. And we were thinking about doing a video that branches both of what we do. And I thought the pollution from homesteads, like farm runoff, contributing to waterways, which is actually a real thing. So if you live in a rural area like I do, there's a lot of these little farmettes or homesteads, and one of them by themselves is not going to be impactful, to a waterway. But when you have 500 or so in a smaller area, and you get a rainstorm, particularly in our area, is very mountainous and hilly. It's like a bowl, so it gathers all of the nitrogen-rich farm runoff and goes into the waterways and can cause algae blooms and all that fun stuff. It's not really fun stuff; it's bad stuff. Right after C virus, they were not putting all that panel, said it was in the feed. It caused the birds not to lay. That's when I researched what was missing and found out what could be added to bring the birds back to laying. Yeah, I remember. That was the great chickens aren't laying eggs controversy, and everybody was looking for a feed. I remember that. Sorry, I'm getting off track because we're just about done anyway discussing this methionine and lysine. Go over one last time because people like bullet points. Where are my points for lysine and methionine? Lysine. So these are both limiting amino acids, lysine and methionine. Lysine is going to be critical for muscle growth and albumin, egg production. The methionine, keratin, and feather production, as well as a lot of other things, as well as being necessary for the synthesis of any protein. So methionine is quite important. So do be sure that it's in the diet. It's coming from animal products in a natural setting. The bird's getting it, scavenging around, eating insects. Insects, I call animal, but yeah, it's a type of animal. It's insect. So yeah, the birds are getting their methionine from the insects, these limiting amino acids. But like I like to often say, we will never be able to meet the bird's needs as well as the environment to which they were designed. But the birds no longer fit the environment to which they're designed because they've been bred to be completely different animals. They're big, huge egg-laying monsters. So they wouldn't thrive in that environment now anyway. So, but metabolically, they still have a foundation very similar, but it's been scaled up. So we need to meet the needs of that scaling. And thusly, we have to supplement their diet with an artificial diet. Anything that we're producing, anything you introduce that's not coming from the environment is artificial. Not that it's made of plastic. It's just that we're doing the work that nature should be doing, but nature can't do. So we have to do it. So we have to supply an artificial diet. And hopefully the diet is healthy and, cleanly researched, if that makes sense. I hope it does. All right. Cool. I think that about will suffice for the discussion of this topic, which is an interesting topic. You're going to hear that occasionally if you're hanging out in chicken clubs and you get to the chicken party and people are talking limiting amino acid this, limiting amino acid that. That's what they're probably talking about is the lysine and methionine. They are required before, if all other amino acid needs are met, but those are not present, they limit the use of those other amino acids for the synthesis of proteins and the health and well-being and optimal function of our beloved friends, our chickens. The end. Okay, cool. I think that's that. All right, you guys. My mouth is about as dry. It's like I've been eating a sock from talking so much. But yeah, this is cool. I really like learning this stuff. I like teaching it. Every once in a while, I get a cool subject. I think that my favorite thing I did last year, since it's 2026, we'll talk about that. Oh, John has something to say. I have one male with 4 females. The male has become very aggressive to you, or the kids reaching in the cage but perfectly fine with hens. Is this common? I should have Angela over here for that question. Is this common? Well, this is a population study. I'm going to talk scientists talk. So if we're doing a population study, I couldn't say it's common without testing it against a population of other birds. But from my experience, no, I haven't had an aggressive bird. We've had many thousands of these creatures over the years. Aggressive, it may be reacting. Aggressive, it's become very aggressive to me, or the kids reaching in. I don't know. I mean, there could be a million causes to that. You know what people love to say? When you're talking to a bird person and they don't really know everything, I'm talking bad about people, but a default go-to is bad genetics, cull it. And that's not always the case. Could be a lot of things. Could be predator, could be environmental change, could be a hormonal issue. We talked about bird endocrine stuff, and there could be an issue going on there that might be from stressors or a feed issue. It could be a lot of things. Why is it identifying you as a threat? I don't know about that. Is it aggressive for another reason? Is there a scent present or something that might be instigating it? I couldn't tell you. Are you carrying in an environmental thing from the house that it's detecting? I don't know. Did that happen after sexual maturity or environmental modification that can indicate stressors? Very good insight, you guys. I'm betting on hormonal, but you don't. It's hard to say. I see a lot of questions like online. People ask a question, and like the worst but most true answer is, I'm sorry, it's insufficient data. Like there's not enough information. People will say, hey, my quail's not laying, or this is happening, or that's happening. I'm doing this, this, and this. And okay, I mean, it should be laying under those conditions, but it's not still. So that means insufficient data. Some kind of piece of data is missing, because if you knew the cause, then we would state it. So obviously something else is the cause. So we don't know. Yeah, anything that calms down in a few weeks, it's more than likely hormonal. Ooh, I like this. Bird sleuthing over my video. Very cool. I wonder what it could be. You haven't been arguing with the birds, have you? I know that can set them off. They are 7 weeks old, been breeding for at least a week. Eggs, also a week. Going for 2 or 3 weeks. Let me see if Angela's down here at all. Hi, hon. Do you want to come and answer a question? No, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was looking for Angela. She's disposed at the moment. We have some issues in the fish world. There are so many available variables, right? It's hard to diagnose an issue unless you know every detail, right, about what's going on and what has been going on. Exactly. So, Tommy, I think you and I think alike. You're a systems theory guy. Well, it sounds like it because you're talking about it in systems theory. It's very, very hard to know anything specifically within a system. If it's a component of a system, if there's many, contributing nuanced variables, you can't, because they're all interconnected and intercontributing, like they all affect one another. So it's very hard to pinpoint causal factor. But we are reductionist in the way we perceive things, people, I mean. So we look for the simplest answer. We look for A to B, causal relationships, very simple things for us to understand, because this is how our brains are built. So it's our default. So it's like, oh, this problem has arisen, so it's probably that's the cause. Occam's razor, many times. So what's an Occam's razor in this case? Oh, I got it. My chicken stopped laying eggs. I don't know why. Well, you haven't told me anything. So I'm going to use sleuthing, and I'll say, tier down. We'll start at the highest level. The sunlight's gone. Is it getting enough light? No? Okay, that's probably the cause. But it could be something else too. Could be anything. But, we go from most likely down, and it's hard to tell, like Tommy said, without knowing all details. That's a lot of talk to tell you, like you're asking a simple question, but it's really, really hard to give like a precise answer without knowing like a lot of the background. And it's frustrating to sit here and be like, well, this, that, the other. I just don't want to shoot off my hip and give you a vague answer. As the weather changes, that could add an extra variable. Occam is not given enough credit in the problem resolution. Oh, I'm all for simplest explanation, because it's usually the correct one, but not always. And that's the terrible part, because somebody, usually if it's a simple explanation, especially with this homesteading stuff, it gets figured out relatively quickly and resolved. So if it's not the simplest explanation, that's when people start going around looking for answers and getting all kinds of wild contribution and conspiracy about what could possibly be the cause. Like the chicken feed issue during Corona apocalypse. Everybody said, oh, they're intentionally formulating the feed. Verna, you were talking about this, if you're still there. they were intentionally formulating the feed so they wouldn't lay eggs. I'm like, well, it's probably they're getting cheap. I don't know. I had no idea what that was about. I was with the thought of inexperienced chicken people being the loudest people in the room. And that's why that perception became something thought to be reality. And if it was feed related, the most logical thing would have been, well, shipping is shut down, so maybe they're getting cheaper components. The mix isn't the same, or it's degrading during shipping, something like this. But it was hard to tell because you didn't know all of the contributing variables. So that would be bad. All right, you guys. I think my mouth is so dry, I'm going to go take this video to the end. Over-the-counter diagnoses are only permissible in a completely controlled or sterile environment. Yeah, right, and that's hard to find. You might just have room with some personality as well. Maybe he's just really protective over his flock. I'm definitely leaning towards hormonal at 7 weeks. Oh, yeah, real. This is my first batch of quail. They are from a reputable breeder. I just didn't know if this is a common occurrence and something to pass or if it's just the way they are. I don't know, John. Like, how aggressive is a bird? Is he actively going at you? Yes, but I like Tommy's diagnosis of hormonal because he's starting to breed and they're territorial and he's getting his harem collected and he's protecting them. I mean, all animals do that, so that might be the case. And you're the only animal that's going in the cage besides quail because they're in the hutch, right? And they're probably safe from predators. Nobody's coming in there unless it's a high stress environment, which it's probably not. Like, we'll jump in the air a bit to bite at me when I start to reach in the cage. Yeah, I like the hormonal. Dr. Tommy, I'm going with your diagnosis. Hormonal issue, breeding age, and protecting his flock of ladies. The roosters do it. Our roosters do it. So roosters do that. Yep. Katie, they definitely will get pecky when hungry. So with quail, obviously, we always say keep them fed 24 hours a day. Just keep food available. They don't overeat. Like a chicken will get fat and put on adipose and get fat deposits. Quail aren't going to overeat like that. In the winter, they're eating a lot more because it's freezing cold and they're going to keep their body warm, and they may put a little fat on their body just because of the temperature change. But yeah, when the quail get hungry, they do get pecky. Food and water fully stocked. John, I don't know what to say. I can't obviously give you a precise thing, but yeah, I like the idea that it's probably hormonal. These guys are, they're of age. They're going out to the club. They're seeing somebody else come in. They're like, what are you doing? I'm talking to these chickens, or the chicks over here, or the females. So we may be protecting, being territorial over that. But I would not be one of those people to say, oh, it's genetics. You got to cull them. People do that all the time with roosters. Give it a couple weeks. He'll more than likely calm down once he realizes he isn't competing for his females. Yes. Thank you, Tommy. Yeah, I never like telling anybody this is what's happening because like you said, Tommy, you never know. You can't know for sure. There's like the Occam's razor thing, Katie, right? Most likely explanation is probably the correct one, but not always. So, all right, you guys, I really appreciate seeing you. I'm going to split out of here in a minute. Happy New Year to everybody. If you found this video of any use, please like and share. I think this year there's so much AI garbage people are plopping on the internet just to compete for time. I don't understand this. So I'm going to really focus on doing more interpersonal stuff with people. Again, focusing on education and encouraging people to start things, do things with their family, because there's so much diversion being dumped onto the internet. So I'd like to focus on that. Happy New Year, you guys. Tommy, John. Yeah, John, good luck. Let us know how things go. You can always comment on this video again. I'd be happy to hear about that if it strikes your head in a couple of weeks to Oh yeah, I was talking about these quail. They're calm now. Yeah, well, good luck with them. Thanks for stopping in, Donis. If you're still around, thanks for stopping in from Haiti. It's like 5 degrees where I am. It's probably warm where you are. All right. All right, you guys. Thanks, Tommy. Thanks, John, Erna, team. I'll see you next time. Sorry it's been 2 weeks. Been very busy. But we'll probably see you next week. And Alex, if she's still there, or I may well do that quail business strategies next week. That's actually a good topic. All right. I'll see you guys. Have a happy night.